Here now is Kim Strassel, Wall Street Journal columnist and a Fox Business contributor. Well, kudos for the Journal editorial page for publishing the piece. You don't always agree with pieces you publish, but Kim, the definition of insanity is doing over and over again what is proven wrong over and over again. And Soros is committed to doing that. I mean, is the man insane?
Yeah, it's revealing, David, because you read that and you really get an insight into the psychology here. You know, there are some things he said in that op-ed which I think sound pretty reasonable and that many of us would agree with. He said that, you know, we should treat drug addiction as a disease. I agree. You know, we should treat mental health problems as a disease. Sure, we should have better community police relations. Great. But then when you dig in, what's really motivating him here is he believes that you should fundamentally have different standards of justice based on your race or your income. And that's simply antithetical to the American justice system. Lady Justice, blind. Yeah. She doesn't care if you're rich or poor or what color. And so, but this is what's driving it, is this belief that we should have two standards of justice, and that's where you end up making the same mistakes again and again.
And the outcome does not match what he says is his goal. And I'm just going to put up a quote from the article. He says, "The idea that we need to choose between justice and safety is false. They reinforce each other. If people trust the justice system, it will work." Well, the problem is the people don't trust the justice system because it isn't working. Justice in most people's minds is the idea of protecting the innocent and punishing the guilty. Many people see that exactly the opposite is happening. We're punishing the innocent and protecting the guilty.
Yeah, I mean, he actually went so far as to say that, you know, New York prosecutor Alvin Bragg was proving very effective. You know, tell that to every person who works in a bodega in New York, you know, after this incident of a man who was accosted, attacked, and then when he fought back, got slapped, at least initially, with you know, a murder charge. This is just insanity. So, and it's not working anywhere. It's not working in LA. Any of these cities where you see these prosecutors are engaged in it, the people do feel right now that there is a trade-off between what he would call justice and security.
And it's forcing Americans to take justice into their own hands. I mean, you saw in L.A., I believe we have the video. We can put it up as I'm talking. This store owner, I think it was a liquor store, who was confronted by a guy on the left with an automatic gun. And the store owner, kudos to him, he pulled out a shotgun and shot the guy. The guy said he blew my arm off. Fortunately, the shop owner has not been prosecuted in any way, at least yet. So, but it is dangerous when individuals feel it's like the Wild West before the sheriffs came in, when people had to take matters into their own hand. That doesn't always work out so well.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely crazy. And, you know, just watching these scenes is absolutely nuts. And by the way, kudos to the police department for not doing what Alvin Bragg initially did and saying that this guy was not going to be charged because he was engaged in self-defense. But, you know, this is all interesting because it also comes to, David, it got overshadowed by this Manchin-Schumer bill. I can't imagine there are a lot of Democrats who are thrilled seeing that op-ed, at least those up for re-election.
Exactly.
You know, they were just headed out of town last week. And they failed to come to an agreement on a policing bill that their vulnerable Democrats really wanted to go into campaign with, which would have given some money to police departments across the country, and their progressives blocked it. They're really hurting from this image of defund the police and loosey-goosey prosecutors. Absolutely.
No, it's clear that the crime issue just falls directly on the heads of the Democrats, and with Soros now doubling down in his commitment to fund these far-left radicals, I don't see how the Democrats can run away from the issue before the midterms. Do you?
No, not at all. And in fact, I think what you're going to end up seeing, too, not just in the midterms, but in the years coming ahead, is you're going to end up having other Democrats challenging some of these progressives, and you're going to have a war within the Democratic Party. And we'll see who comes out on top. But George Soros, as we know, he's got a lot of deep pockets.
Yeah, he doesn't. Well, he's a billionaire, and he's willing to spend his money before he goes. Legislative accomplishments. You're hearing that phrase more often in the mainstream media about how actually Biden is a very successful president because he's had all these legislative accomplishments. But voters, I think what voters care about are the things that they face every day, day after day, like rising prices, like the crime that we were talking about, and particularly if you're living in the south of the country, like the border chaos. Isn't that what's affecting Americans and what will affect their votes?
Oh, absolutely. It's been very amusing to watch the media, those stories you're reading. I think they felt like they were pre-written like months ago. They just couldn't wait to write the story saying Biden's got his mojo back, right? But I think what they miss, all of them, is that millions of Americans could really care less what's going on in Washington, D.C., or what the exact elements are of this 725-page bill, because they know deep down that it's not going to affect any of those big issues that you just mentioned. In fact, could actually make them worse.
Yeah, and lest we forget, 2016, it's amazing how it seems like it was decades ago, but in 2016, one of the key elements that Trump kept pushing time and time again was the border and his border wall. That was one of the main things that got him elected in 2016. We may see a repeat of that in 2024.
Yeah, because the other thing that people forget here too, David, is they often talk about how partisan immigration is. And it's true that when it comes to things like providing citizenship, that there are some very clear divides between Democrats and Republicans and voters.
Yeah.
But border security is a bipartisan issue.
Yes.
Like by something like 70%, most Americans agree that we need a secure border, that we need to actually, that in fact, they actually feel we should have fewer people coming into the country. And they're very, very mortified by what they're seeing, especially because they know that's also feeding into some of the crime we're seeing. And now increasing worries, we're talking about terrorists again.
Right.
Who else is coming across the border down there?
Yeah, and of course there's fentanyl, and now mayors of New York and Washington are complaining about a dribble of refugees that are making it into their city. The great Kim Strassel from the Wall Street Journal, wonderful to see you here. Thank you very much for coming in. Appreciate it, Kim.